Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. Welcome to this week's episode. Today we hear from Oscar Brooks, co-founder of V88 Apps, a premium no-code agency which currently has over 60 clients in 9 countries. This is a particularly impressive statistic considering that V88 is barely 3 years old and was started at the height of the pandemic. V88's rapid growth and challenges of launching in the pandemic form part of today's discussion. Other topics on the agenda including finding out how Oscar went from biochemistry graduate to entrepreneur, what no-code is and how it's going to evolve over the next few years, and the influence of entrepreneurial parents on his own personal destiny. It's a fascinating conversation with a young founder who has great ambitions. Please do enjoy the show. Welcome, Oscar, to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you, Warren.
It's great to have you on the podcast. And I suppose we should start, this is going to be a story about ambition, startup, technology, and how all that merges together in terms of your story. So I suppose we should start with how did you go as an individual from being a biochemistry graduate to no-code entrepreneur?
Yeah, great place to start. So it's an interesting one. My sort of story begins where back at school, I was not necessarily the kid that knew exactly what he wanted to do. I didn't really have a sort of dream vocation, but I was always strong scientifically. So I ended up studying biochemistry at uni off the back of that, and I really enjoyed it, but wasn't hugely passionate about it as a topic. Whilst I was there, did all sorts of different stuff around entrepreneurship, did some sort of simple software development modules and all the rest of it. And I ended up working out of uni for a small tech startup down in Bournemouth that was basically an online platform for clinical trial management. And I was in there to ultimately look at the data that they were capturing on patients on clinical trials. But quickly found that I had a love for other parts of that business. So ended up doing some salesy bits, which was really fun. And about a week into the job, I was chucked in to go and demo a solution to quite a big customer. And I just loved everything about it. I loved trying to deliver a piece of software. I loved their reaction and everything to do with that. So that's really how it started, my kind of idea that I wanted to do something with tech and something with people, and somehow combine that. And whilst I was at that job, I came across the concept of no code, which we'll no doubt talk about in more depth.
I think it'll be my next question.
And ultimately, I started playing around with it on my own, building simple applications for me to use in the gym, for me to track my to-dos, etc. And I started to kind of notice some strengths that it had that the sort of traditional software that was being used in the company that I was working for at the time was missing. And at that point, I sort of left the job on great terms. And this was as COVID started to creep up, where initially I thought, maybe this wasn't a good idea. And basically went out alone initially and reached out to some local businesses with a capability to build applications and with a passion to to try and use those applications to benefit those businesses in some way.
Brilliant. So I'm going to lead on with, I suppose, I've got to ask, what is no code? No, what is no code software? Because, to me, software needs code. So what does it mean to be no code?
So in essence, I'm going to try and talk layman's here.
Please.
So no code is the use of some very smart modern platforms or tools that allow you to build software and applications with very little use of actual code. So you may use a little bit here and there to kind of augment what you're creating, but typically you can use these platforms to build software applications without writing code. And what this does in summary, and the real value, is the fact that this rapidly speeds up the process to develop a piece of software.
Okay. And what sort of timescales do you save?
So this is probably going to sound insane to you, but I would say typically the sort of things that we create, we do so in between 5 and 15 days. A team of traditional developers might take, who are coding this from the ground up, might take 6 months.
Wow.
So what no code really gives, now there's a space for both, because it has its limitations. If you could do everything and anything with no code, then there would be zero requirement for software developers, and that's absolutely not the case. So there is definitely a market share for both, 100%. But what it means is where it can be used and applied, we can approach businesses and have conversations with businesses, and rather than saying to them, having listened to their requirements or their problem, if you have about 100 grand, we could deliver something in 6 months. We can say to them, we could probably have something for you to play with by the end of next week, that we can iterate on. So it's a completely different space. But it's certainly an interesting one.
Definitely. And is it really just an extension, and this is my naivety, maybe, of open source software?
It's kind of it's a level up from that. So you're not necessarily plugging into or using existing open source code. What you're doing is you're using kind of a visual builder to build out a piece of software. So you're adding in sort of components and buttons, and the work is in what happens when you click on those buttons. So the speed at which you can put an interface together and connect it to some data is much, much faster.
So someone's done some of that kind of, built the little modules that you can then bring together.
No code is being used everywhere, and it's the terminology I think that people aren't aware of. So Calendly is a no-code tool. You can build your own booking system that people can book a call on. So you can design how your booking link looks. You can upload your logo. You can specify your availability without writing a line of code. There are all sorts of web development platforms that you may have heard of: Wix, WordPress, Squarespace, Webflow. They are no-code tools largely. Again, you can build a website now without needing to write code.
Without being a techie.
So the same applies for applications, and what we do is we specialize in using no-code to build solutions for businesses. That's our that's where we are. And
give some examples, some typical solutions that you've provided.
So it varies massively from sort of the weird and wonderful to just sort of process-driven stuff. But property management is a sector that works really well for us. So we've worked with, I want to say, almost 10 property businesses now. With a vision to ultimately look at their process of tenancy management and the handling of maintenance issues. So if you imagine you have a property business that either owns, if they're lucky, or manages a portfolio of a few hundred properties, you've got tenants reporting issues via email, WhatsApp, phone call, blah, blah,
bombarding you from all directions.
The team in the office are trying to somehow manage that process, and they're phoning contractors to see when they're available. They're then asking the tenant if that suits, and suddenly, before you know it, a broken radiator can take hours of everyone's time.
Yeah.
So we'll understand how their particular process works, because this no-code stuff is bespoke.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is we'll build a set of applications around that. So we'll introduce a tenant app that lets tenants report maintenance issues and upload a photo and all the rest of it, and flag its urgency. We'll then introduce a portal for the team, again, that works exactly how they want it to. That will allow them to assign, let's say, contractors to designated issues, and they can go and pick those up on a contractor app, and they can resolve those issues and let the tenant know when they're going to be there. And suddenly what you've done is you've streamlined an entire process for a business that can be time consuming and therefore obviously costly. And as a result, they can go and focus on growth.
Right.
That's a great example.
Yeah,
but we've done some weird and wonderful solutions as well. So just to give you one example, we worked with a really cool company called SkySpecs recently. So they're a global organization. Their head office is in New York. And they use remote drones to assess wind turbines on renewable energy farms.
Okay.
They do it all over the globe. So they have these pilots all over the globe, from deep, dark Arizona all the way across to Japan. And what they do is they arrive at a wind farm, these pilots, and they whip a drone out of their backpack and they fly it round the wind farm.
Sounds like a great job.
It sounds awesome, right? It's just them, a backpack and a dog in some cases. It's brilliant. And they fly the drones around these wind farms, and they take images and videos, and they assess them in order to report any potential maintenance issues. So obviously increase the efficiency of these wind farms. But what they didn't have was a way centrally for all these pilots everywhere in the world to check in with their location, so that the office knew where they were, to upload their reports, to sign the latest safety docs and things like that around what they do, and to learn as well, to improve how they operate. So we, again, sat down with them for a long time and just understood exactly what they did and how their processes worked, because they couldn't find a generic tool to handle this sort of system, as you can imagine. So we ended up building a mobile application that allows these pilots to check in exactly where they are, to carry out educational quizzes, to upload their findings. And the team in New York have this stunning portal. And this all took I think this was about 10 days.
Okay.
Their team have this portal that has a great big map that shows where all of their pilots are live, checking in. They can create quizzes and educational pieces. And they can immediately receive any reports that need to be sent out to their customers, and hit a button and it will send a PDF email report. Right. So again, it's a streamlining of a process there to let them actually focus on growth and add value to what they offer.
That's an amazing example. And I suppose that leads to the question, do you describe yourself as a software developer, or do you describe yourself more as a business analyst and process analyst?
That's a really good question. I think, technically speaking, as an agency, we're software developers.
Yeah.
But we are modern in the way that we do things.
Yeah.
We do things in a very fun and approachable way.
Yeah.
And this is probably one of the main things with no code that makes it so powerful, is that because it's so much quicker and simpler to build solutions, you can focus more on the actual problem at hand that you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
So rather than spending weeks mapping out and planning how you're going to actually create the tech, we know how we're going to create it.
Yeah.
So what we can actually do is sit down and almost consult.
Yeah.
And just ask questions and say, look, we want to know every single possible detail of your problem or of the solution that you're trying to build or of your vision.
Yeah.
And that allows us to kind of deliver a more effective solution rather than focusing on actually the nitty gritty of how we're going to build it.
Yeah.
Because we know that on the fly. That's
so it is a combination of the two.
It's a combination of the two. It's a combination of the two, and I approach all the conversations that I have with business owners and kind of IT departments in the same way, which is that my job here is not to try and sell to anybody. My job is to listen to what these people are trying to do, and to try and, once I understand it enough, qualify that against my capabilities or our capabilities as an agency. And at that point, if I think I have a solution, then I'll present it. So it's kind of both, and often I might say, actually, you might want to go down the bespoke route here. You might want to try this tool. You might actually be okay using this generic platform that's going to cost you less. So it's a case of being transparent and honest, as well as actually building the tech.
Absolutely. And you've grown phenomenally. You said you started in the pandemic, which I'm sure brought its own challenges. But you've now, one of the things is not just the stats in terms of the number of clients that you've developed, it's the fact that you've worked with clients in over 9 countries. So what do you attribute this amazing growth to, Oscar?
I think I have to say, first and foremost, it's being in the right place at the right time. Okay. I think with any of these things. So
it's a very humble answer.
Well, it's thank you. It's a case of having an interest in something that was just creeping out of the woodwork, and becoming more popular. So that, I have to give credit to that where it's due. But I think realistically, it comes back to this concept of being approachable, and just being people. And I think that makes a huge difference when you're talking to kind of businesses and business owners. What's helped massively is where I kind of got in relatively early in the no-code space. Some of the tools that we use, I'm a certified expert. So what happens in many cases is a business might come across one of these tools, one of these platforms, and think, we could this could provide a brilliant solution for us. And they'll quickly realize that actually it's quite difficult to do, or perhaps they don't have the time or the inclination amongst running their company. So they'll look for an expert with some fab reviews, who's done plenty of solutions, such as myself. And they'll kind of reach out, at which point they're largely sold on the concept of no code and of the tool that they're looking to use.
So solution type thing.
So it's a verification process, and my job there is to kind of qualify what they're trying to do with the tech to make sure it can be achieved, and to be honest with them. And at that point, you've developed trust already, and they trust in the technology because they're keen on the concept anyway. So it's sort of, it makes it quite a simple process. But it really comes down to, I think, just being approachable, being in the right place at the right time, and just approaching conversations with passion and confidence, and making it fun.
Brilliant. Really, really good answer there. And I suppose that leads on to the fact, doesn't it? You saw the opportunity, you saw something, you saw development, it intrigued you. Maybe that was the scientific mind in you, was just like that inquisitive mind. And then you've created a business from there. Do you think you were, always destined to run your own business, to be an entrepreneur?
What question? Well, as you know, my dad, his career was similar. He was still is. He's a software entrepreneur. And obviously growing up with him, I always made sort of little observations on his lifestyle. From, being able to spend time with me and my younger brother, being able to spend time with my mum, kind of almost being the master of his own destiny, albeit being super busy of his own accord. And that part of it, I always really wanted for myself. I'd love to be in that position one day where I'm able to take an afternoon off if I want to go and watch my kids play sport, or whatever that might be, and kind of make up for it at another time with this kind of flexible working concept. But the tech side of things, really, the passion grew for me towards the end of uni and into my first job. So not something I'd always wanted to do, but it's certainly somehow a lifestyle that I wanted to kind of get to.
So there was an appeal to have some control of your destiny. be that entrepreneur, but
Yeah.
not necessarily software, and software just happened because of that, as you've
Yeah.
described, that first medical
Yeah.
kind of business role.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Mark, your dad he was probably in the first year. So listeners, go back, listen to Mark Brooks and that episode and hear his story. But one of the things that would intrigue me is, Mark, and he talks very honestly about selling the business. And you must have been, when he sold that business, 10 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from that point, he went on and developed other businesses. But to that point, there was something that, VIP as it was, was all of his time and energy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then created that time and space afterwards.
Yeah.
Can you remember what it was like in the family when Mark sold that business? And how did it feel? Or were you too young?
At the time, he was making sacrifices. I remember the sheer workload and just it was non-stop. It was non-stop. But it's something I think that he was doing in the knowledge that if it came off, it would be fantastic for him and his family and for all of us. So I don't remember it in great depth, but I certainly remember the kind of time he spent working on it. But he absolutely loved every second of it. Mm-hmm. Those are some of his best days. Yeah. When I talk to him and when I'm always asking questions about, what was it like doing this or this?
Natural mentor.
Yeah. Dream mentor, right? Yeah. So, and he always talks about those days as the toughest days, but also the best ones. Yeah. Because you're in the thick of it. It's exciting. You're leading a team of people. You're creating innovative software and you're genuinely benefiting businesses with it, which is just fantastic. So, it's an interesting one.
Definitely. And sort of back to your own kind of journey, 3 years into the V88 kind of experience, what's the greatest thing you've learnt along the way?
I think what I've learnt is that it doesn't need to be as scary as a lot of people think it does, to create something and start offering a service to businesses. It was very daunting at first. Yeah. So I remember my first few sort of sales calls, because I started during the pandemic. Yeah. So all I've really ever known is online working. So everything I do is through Zoom, and obviously with half my clients in different countries, it makes it quite difficult to have meetings, but in person. And I remember sitting there on Zoom waiting for them to join, thinking, are they going to join? Are they not? With just the sweatiest palms you can imagine, almost shaking. But once you get into the swing of it, it's a lot of fun. And I think, if I ever found myself in a different life with a different skill, if I could go and, sell it to people and use it to benefit them in some way, then I'd go and do it again and again and again. It's incredibly hard, and it's mentally, it's draining. Yeah. Any entrepreneur with a growing or a company of any size will know how how exhausting it can be at times. But that's sort of part of the fun.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we at Evolve, we have a startup program, and we call it Ignite, because it is that, isn't it? It's that ignition, that energy you need to get the ball rolling and get into that place where you're now, ours is where you start to decide how you're going to scale it, what happens next. But the energy it takes to get that initial momentum is all consuming, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Because it's something that you don't sort of go home at 5 p.m. And switch off, because your income is directly proportional. It's directly related to how well you specifically are doing. So it's that constant sort of thought in your head of where am I initially, especially now, not so much. But initially it's where am I going to get that next customer from? Where am I going to generate my next couple of leads from? Have I done this? Have I done that? What about all these administrative tasks? What about marketing my business? How am I going to go about that? And then you start spiraling and putting together a million to-dos in your head at 10 p.m. or 3, whatever time it is, and it's all a bit much, but it's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah. And has this entrepreneurial journey been what you expected, or has it been different to what your expectations would have been?
Different.
In what way?
I thought this whole journey would have been much easier than it is.
Yeah.
I underestimated all of the small things that you have to keep in check in order to continuously deliver an exceptional service to all of your existing customers, alongside finding new ones, alongside keeping up to date with the latest thing in your space, so that you're kind of cutting edge and you can deliver, that extra piece of value. I hugely underestimated all of it together in order to kind of build something that you're proud of and that all of your customers can say, no, they're seriously good. Yeah. I did underestimate that. Which is probably no bad thing. No,
it's just part of life's journey, isn't it? It's the rich tapestry of life type of thing,
So that it's not what I expected it to be, no. But I love how it is.
And in that whole, because there'll be people listening to this podcast that are starting that kind of new business or thinking about it. For you, what's the bit you've enjoyed the most about that journey so far?
My favourite part, two things. Both involve people. Yeah. So I love tech, and I'm passionate about the tech that we create, without a doubt. Yeah. But really, for me, it's the people side of things. So I love the excitement of talking to new and different businesses on a weekly basis, because they're all unique. You could talk to 50 businesses in the same sector, but they are all unique in one way. The founders all have a different mindset. They all have different visions for where they want to go, and they all have different problems. Yeah. So for me, the first thing is talking to these businesses and just listening and understanding, where their pain points lie and how they operate and things like that. The second and probably the best part is when I demo something, right. Provided it's good, which it is. At V88 we produce some pretty incredible stuff. Yeah. Not to blow my own trumpet, it's something I'm proud of. It's something I'm proud of, and it's the look on people's faces when you deliver something 10 days after the word go, and they go, how have you done this? How?
Yeah. Particularly if they're a larger corporate like you work with and they're used to the traditional software way.
Yeah, we, a good example is I spoke to, recently, a couple of weeks ago, spoke to two guys in London who have this incredible startup for a recruitment company. I won't go into detail, but it's brilliant. They're on sort of an accelerator program, and I think they're going to fly with it, to be honest. And they have, one of them is, they're unbelievably smart guys. Yeah. One of them has a Berkeley MBE and a couple of different master's degrees at Oxford, and the other one's a super smart software engineer. And they encountered no code, having tried to build out this recruitment portal using some various tools and some code and things like that, and it had taken them quite a while, and they kind of hit a bit of a wall with parts of it. And we, in a week or so, turned something around and presented to them sort of the framework for a portal for them. And they were completely blown away. Right. And these are two of the smartest guys I've ever spoken to, because they've not seen anything like it. And it's just the delight and the joy on their faces to go, this is actually really cool, and this could really, really work for us. So that's my favourite part of doing it. Yeah.
And if somebody listening to this thinking about starting their own business, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them, having recently been through that experience yourself?
I would say you've got to just try your whatever you're thinking, if it's a service or a product. You don't need to quit what you're doing in order to see if it works. Just reach out to somebody who it might benefit, and offer it to them, and assess the outcomes, assess the results, learn from whatever comes of it, and then iterate on that, do it again. And then after that, you can kind of think to yourself, well, this has been beneficial for this handful of individuals, so perhaps I could try and now charge someone for this. I think it's that sort of simple to get going. I think the hard bit is trying to actually create a scalable entity.
And would you say that, we talked about the things you've enjoyed, is that being one of the toughest challenges, is getting it to the point where it stops being your laptop, the no-code apps, and it becomes a scalable business?
I think V88 has, because of the nature of what we do and how we do it, we've seen quite significant growth without the need for a large team. That's now going to need to change. I think we will definitely be growing the team in the next 12 months, 100%. The hardest part for me in business, perhaps because I think it's a skill gap for myself, but also I think the world of it has changed, is marketing. I think there's so many avenues. There's so many avenues and ways to do it, and you speak to different people and they all have a different way of approaching it. It comes down to sort of, who are you trying to speak to? What are you trying to speak to them about? Where are they? How do you speak to them about what you want to say, and in what medium, in what format? And there's a million and one ways to do it, I think, in every single case. So that's what I'm learning at the moment, is how to sort of reach my audience.
And I love the fact that you came out of uni and you took that first run, then you started your business, and that takes some guts and ambition to do that. Do you sometimes reflect, because perhaps the more traditional way people start a business is they leave school, go to uni, whatever, but they then go and have perhaps a job in the corporate world and learn some of these skills, and then start their business having that background. Do you think I suppose, is it an advantage? Do you think you've done it your way, a disadvantage? Do you ever reflect that perhaps you should have taken a more traditional route?
I think it depends on your individual circumstances. For me, I never got on so well with that side of the world. I never envied the person with the really good job. I just never did. So I was kind of keen to get out there and try and do something for myself as soon as possible. But I also had, some great mentorship and advice around me, and I was at a point in my life where it was a low risk thing for me to do. I think actually, if I tried to start this in a year or two's time, where my cost of living is significantly higher, suddenly if you find yourself with a mortgage and bills and the cost of life, I think it's much more of a risk financially to go and start something. So no, I don't have any regrets. I wish I actually started it sooner.
Brilliant.
To be honest, I do.
I get that. I think there's a couple of things you've said there that resonate. Is that one is, I think you've got to think about yourself as an individual, and maybe that maybe it is the effect of your mum and dad, and the fact that they're very independent characters, and that's created independence in you. But you have got to look at, well, what suits me, doesn't it? And some people need that, perhaps that confidence of further education still, and getting some experience to do it. But actually, if your mindset is, I don't fit that world, then why go play in that world? Just get on and do it, and see what happens. And the other side of it is that piece around risk, isn't it? When I started the core business that I grew, which was Inspire, I was 29 years old. I was married, but we didn't have any kids at the time. Soon came, and the responsibility came. But it was Michaela had a great job. It was easy. There was no risk. And I think sometimes if you start the business with the burden of those responsibilities,
the stress,
and sometimes you don't make the bold decisions you need to make in those early years to ignite the business and get it moving.
I think the scary part for a lot of, certainly for what was for me and for a lot of younger people, is having the confidence to walk into a room or to get on a call with an audience that's highly likely to be significantly older than you and more experienced, and to say, I can deliver you this. I was raised from a young age to, I'll never forget it. Always my parents, both of them, saying to me, make sure, you look so-and-so in the eye, you shake their hand, you ask them how you are, you present yourself. And I think I was just raised to talk, in a way to speak to adults from a young age with confidence. And it got me really used to just be able to sit in a room and just chat to anybody of any age, because it really doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I think that played a role in it.
That played a big role, I'd imagine, definitely. And we should come back to sort of V88 and talk about, you've got a motto that is, if I get this right, okay, knowledge, experience, humour from the team that invented it. That's a great motto. What's the thinking behind the motto, Oscar?
It kind of goes back to what I was saying about being approachable. That way of working in our modern space in the online world using some smart tech, I think it really helps us just present ourselves in such a way that we know what we're talking about. We are experts at what we do, but we want to make it fun. It doesn't need to be super formal, and that's kind of part of it. I think just the combination of doing what we do with confidence, but having light-hearted chats. We have such a laugh with some of our customers. We have such a laugh. And I think I was honestly putting together a profile, like an expert profile, and I just came across that strap line just pops into my head. Literally, it's not particularly thought out. I just thought, what are we about? If I asked any of my customers, what are we about? I think they would say we're knowledgeable, we're experienced, and we're humorous, because we have a laugh while we're doing it.
And have fun along the way, haven't you?
Yeah, that's on. There's nothing more to it than that.
Brilliant, fantastic. And talking about kind of no code, I suppose to the outside world, we've all started now to see and experience ChatGPT and AI and all of that. So with that rapid advancement of AI and its ability, and I've not tried it myself, but to write software code, where do you see the future of software development heading, and how does that affect the no-code environment? Yeah,
I mean, AI is something that we could probably sit here and talk about for a long time.
On it.
I think, firstly, my take on artificial intelligence is as follows. I think a lot of people are confused about what it actually is. What actually is AI? What is GPT? And I think a lot of people kind of assume it's some sort of super advanced Google search, which is not. And I think a lot of people also think that it's this all-encompassing tool where you can just tell it to do something and it will do it perfectly. And so when it doesn't, they sort of think, well, this is rubbish. It's not an advanced Google search tool, and it's not an all-encompassing tool. It's something that needs human intervention, and it's something that, like with any tool, like with a no-code tool, you need to know how to use it to get the best out of it based on what you're trying to use it for. So I can give you a really cool analogy that might help just anybody listening who's a bit unsure as to what AI is. So imagine, let's do Google search first and we'll compare the two. Okay, so you walk into a library, and this is the Google search analogy. Okay, you approach the librarian and you ask them, you say to them, hey, I'm looking to build a garden shed. Can you help me? And in the Google search world, or the search engine world, the librarian's going to go, yeah, if you head to row D, about halfway up on the left, fourth, shelf up, you'll find an assortment of books that are going to help you and teach you how to build a shelf. So that's your search engine. Now think about AI. Okay, so you walk into the library, and the librarian has read and remembers every single piece of information from every single book in the library.
Yeah.
So you approach the librarian and you say, hey, I'm looking to build a garden shed. The librarian will turn to you, and based on the books that it's read and what it understands of everything to do with building a garden shed, it will give you its opinion on the best possible way to do so. But it will also do it based on who you are.
Yeah.
So the librarian, you might then turn around and say, okay, could you make that simpler for me? Because I haven't done much of this before. And the librarian would tell you in a more simple fashion. If you were a kid trying to learn and you said to the librarian, look, I'm only 12, it's going to talk to you in such a way that you understand it. So it's not an advanced search engine. It has read everything that there is out there to read, I think up to the end of 2020, start of 2021. And it's due to soon go and read everything pretty much up to date. But it's how you use it, and it's what you ask it. In terms of getting it to write code, it can do it, and it's fantastic. But it wants to be reviewed.
Okay.
It's
the same
once
as
it spits it out.
produces.
Same as anything it produces. Yeah. Exactly. If I hired a brilliant software developer and asked them to create a piece of software for me, I would still want to check it over and maybe check it with someone else to make sure that it was right.
Yeah.
Same with AI.
Yeah.
But when asking AI to write code, what it does is it creates static software based on, what it knows. So it creates a piece of software based on today.
Yeah.
With no code, because you're using these tools and these platforms, they evolve.
Yeah.
So as they modernize how they look, and as they add features and improvements, that iterates through every solution that we've made. And this is a massive point about no code that's really missed out on, is that when you see a website or an app that's been custom coded, 5 years, even 3 years down the line, it starts to look outdated unless someone's refreshing the UI and adding stuff to it. With no code, the latest updates run through everything we build. So the apps that we created 3 years ago for our first customers look just as slick and modern as the ones that we're producing this week.
Yeah.
So that's kind of something
that's
to be aware
analogy.
of.
That's got it in my head. I've always got to ask this question to people that know or have done the research or use it. Should the world be scared of AI?
I think more so than anything else right now. I think it's just a case of these super smart individuals, wherever they are, whoever they are, just being aware that they have some element of control over it as it evolves. In truth, I'm not sure, but I think it's definitely something to be wary of, for sure. Just
where does it go?
Yeah. I mean, we're using it all over the place. At V88, we've fully integrated with ChatGPT's API. Yeah. So we've got apps using it to for example, clinical trial solution. We built an app that allows healthcare research institute to capture data from patients who have rare diseases to assess the outcome of their treatment, so they can feed that data back to pharma companies to influence them on the best treatments for given rare diseases. In summary. And we're using AI now to summarize, so we can say something like summarize the patient's feedback across the last 12 months to do with sickle cell anemia, and in the click of a finger it will create a written summary based on a table of information that it's never seen before, and it will spit it out perfectly. We're using it all over the place already, so it's great for us because our existing customers are saying, hey, can we use AI? And we're saying, yeah. What do you want to do with it? And we'll jump on and we'll brainstorm on the best way to approach the use of AI for them.
So it is a growth opportunity for you at V88.
100%.
Not a competitive disadvantage. It's a growth opportunity.
Oh, we're going to be promoting it and using it because we've seen it firsthand. It's insanely powerful.
Definitely. And coming back to you as we start to wrap up our conversation, Oscar, what does the future for Oscar Brooks look like, regardless of wherever No Code goes?
What does the future for Oscar Brooks look like?
What does good look like for Oscar?
Good looks like... I mean, I would love to have a team. I would love to run a team. You know, a team of people handling different roles and different parts of an organisation, and to be at the top of that, sort of overseeing everything. It's my number one dream, is to have a team.
Just that ambition.
Just that ambition to have a team. I'm not, you know, revenue aside, I just would love to have a team of people and to have a proper sort of large agency culture one day.
Yeah.
But to be honest, you know, if we continue doing what we're doing and creating beautiful apps and software solutions for businesses everywhere, then that's me, a happy guy, you know. Yeah.
And as you'll know, having listened to a few of the episodes, I'm sure, I always end with the question, you know, what's your personal definition of success?
My personal definition of success is actually quite traditional. I think for me, success is being able to be where I would like to be geographically, in a situation where I have a beautiful family that I love, and that I can look after that family and enjoy my life with them. That's really what I see as being successful.
It's a great definition.
I would rather that than all the money and everything else in the world, but without that sort of circle. I grew up with a family that's very close knit, and I would love the same one day. So if I can do that and be able to support them and enjoy life with them, then that's, for me, is what success is, I would say.
Hairs in the back of my neck is standing up. It's a great definition of success. And if people want to learn more about Oscar, definitely want to learn more about No Code and V88, where can they go?
My LinkedIn is a great place to go. Obviously, Oscar Brooks on LinkedIn. I'm going to be talking a lot, you know, as of now on all things no code and entrepreneurship and AI. But also my website, v88.co.uk. Those are probably the two best places to find me. And yeah, anybody wants to have a brainstorm or just understand how this stuff works or where it might fit, then come and have a chat. Hopefully by now you can see I'm approachable and will welcome a conversation with anybody.
Brilliant. Thank you, Oscar. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've become more knowledgeable about no code. It's been great to hear a bit more about your story and your journey and where you're heading. So thank you for being a great guest on the podcast.
Thank you, Warren.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.